Hey everybody, welcome back. HSC Podcast 105. I think we're on 105, yeah. So keep getting deeper and deeper into the podcast. The Big Box Steve on the mic, Big Smooth. Be the two of us today. I got some good stuff to talk about. So interested in hearing about the NCAA and NFL, getting to some top fives. A lot more top fives coming for you. So for those of you listening, as it
Top
slows
five
down in the
season.
sports world.
Yeah. Got to get you watching baseball, Steve, so we could talk baseball.
Yeah. I've been into baseball for a while, so it's tough for me just to stay in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
So if you're watching, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. First thing we got to jump into, of course, day after the NCAA tournament finishes up. What a great March Madness on both sides. Like you got to admit that. I mean the men's and women's tournaments were both equally as exciting to watch, I think.
Right. And it's the best team won in each, too. So
It
it was
really
awesome.
did. Like that's kind of hard to argue that, where you had these teams with great players. You have Edie on Purdue and you have Clark on Iowa, and then just a couple other good teams like LSU on the women's side that, really has some great players that could have been right there. And um, you had, Cinderella and NC State that, kind of wanted to
Both
pull
sides.
pulling for, so it was really a great Final Four as well, I think. There was some good early tournament stuff, especially in the men's side with Oakland and, a few other teams that, you know, really kind of wanted to pull for. So,
The coach, Calipari in Kentucky, is over because of Oakland.
right. Yeah, good old Jack ended his career in
Yeah.
Kentucky. Oh man, what that was so fun to watch. But just let's talk national championship game for a second on the men's side. Uh, UConn was just dominating people all tournament. I think they set the record, couple records, right? So most points that they
Well,
won by,
yeah, 2 years in a row, every game was a double-digit win.
right? And that was
That's
the other
crazy.
thing. Yeah, I mean that's what is crazy about that is how, I mean, that's a lot of domination over two tournaments. Typically, you would have some of those close games, right? You would think. But I don't really feel like, I mean, Alabama gave them a run. I will say that. Alabama had flashes, but in the end, I think it was too much discipline, too much real just good offense and being very disciplined around the ball, things like that, UConn ended up beating them. But man, Alabama gave them a run.
Right.
Kind of lost in the end, of course, but they were
Right. And
they
then
were winning.
Purdue kept it close until the end when they just kind of fell apart.
The whole kind of second half, I felt like of that game, Purdue, they were sliding, right? It was kind of like
Mhm.
an avalanche coming, and you just saw it. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Um, first half was solid, but what we talked about this the other day. One of Purdue's strengths that they really didn't take advantage of was the kickouts, the three, hitting a high percentage of threes, right? Because they shot for the year wasn't they were one of the best, they're not the best 3-point shooting team percentage wise.
Right.
And they made 1 3 in the first half. And
Yeah,
then
Edie had to do it all himself in the first half, and then I think in the second half he was getting doubled, but he was still trying to do everything in it. Plus, they were not shooting when they had a chance to, kind of giving
right.
up, you know what I mean? And then they were doing some dumb plays too.
Yeah, I think one of the announcers, I think it was maybe it was Grant Hill, the side announcers up during the game, not one of the
Right.
talk during halftime and stuff. But he said a couple times, he's like, you can't hesitate, like what you're talking about when they had those shots. they got to take him right away because as soon as you hesitate, it's not a good shot anymore,
Right.
or
As
you
soon
don't
as,
get it at all.
well, because that was what was happening. A guy would collapse on Edie, but not fully collapse, just like take
Right.
a step or two. He'd pass it out, and then the guy would get back because the guy just hesitated.
Yeah. Yeah, you
And
got
he's
to take
just
it
hit
right
the
away.
ball, shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, and Edie, I mean, I don't want to say he's getting tired, but I mean, the guy played the more minutes than
Yeah.
anybody in the
Oh yeah.
tournament. Uh, something like they showed a stat of the previous two games. He only sat like a minute. And so you
Well, because
gotta
their whole
think,
offense goes through him.
right? Yeah, when he was on the bench, it was rough too. For them. You got to think though, he got tired at some point. Because he missed some dunks.
Hmm.
His and some of his shots, and I don't know if that's just being double teamed a lot or things, but just some of his regular shots, he's hitting like high off the glass and things like that, and it's
Right. It wasn't his best game.
yeah. Well, I mean, still had a great statistics, that's the funny thing, and they talked about that a lot too. It's like we're kind of talking about how this guy didn't have his best game, and he still was what 30 and 10 at
Right.
least, right? So the but UConn, when you watch them play. And this is kind of the thing I miss about college basketball is you got UConn is a unit, number one, right? They play as a unit. They're very unselfish, but they've been there for a while. And then the last year's guys leave, and the guys that were juniors get to move up, right? And they're now the guys in control of the team. But that reminds me of old basketball, you know.
Yeah, I was mad with myself because last week when we did our top five players from the tournament, I changed my number five because I didn't want to cheat, but my number five was originally UConn, the whole team,
Right.
because you couldn't, you know, how you had Sear from Alabama, you have Edie from Purdue, you had Connect from Tennessee, but it was everyone from UConn
Right.
was doing well.
Well, because when one person isn't, playing great, the other guys are stepping up, and you just didn't know who's going to come at you when they're going to come at you in the game. And their defense played solid, and I think it helps, right? Have a guy like Klingon to play a guy like Edie. Not a lot of their schools have a guy like that,
No,
and so that helps them a lot too in that situation. Because, like you said, Purdue's very one-dimensional as far as their offense goes. They do shoot threes, and Edie scores inside, but all of it runs through Edie.
right. Even like, because then they do all the pick and rolls are through Edie. You know, it's like everything is through him. And that's the other thing is like crazy is yeah, he plays the entire game most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, so hats off to him for doing that. But I think it caught on in the second half.
I mean, it did. And I also think that, it's also the first time that anybody, right? Because I had to play a team like UConn for them, they didn't have the kind of matchups until when they got to UConn. It's a whole different monster, right? So it was a great game though. I loved the first half. Like I said, it started to snowball in the second. You saw
Mhm.
that coming. But it was fun to watch. It was a great tournament, good finish, good Final Four. And when you think about a guy like Edie, there's all this talk about the draft, right? We talked a little bit about this before, but I get it. The NBA has changed, but can you still not? How could you not draft this guy in the top 10?
Well, now can you say Klingon, wouldn't he go in the top 10?
Well, they've already talked about him going in the top 15, right?
Yeah,
And if you're going to take Klingon, what's the difference in taking Edie? They're a very similar player. Edie's
right.
a little more skilled, even.
Well, at the beginning of the tournament, Edie was a second rounder. Now he's like 15 to 20. So he has improved his stock.
Yeah, it's just weird that you wouldn't see a guy like him be a top five,
And then, you know, he's a senior. How many seniors actually get taken in the lottery anymore?
right?
Because usually you're like, oh, you stayed that long, you must not be that good.
Well, and plus so many of the five stars and the top 100 dudes that come as freshmen and sophomore and whatever, they leave early.
Yeah.
and a lot of teams don't want to pass up on those type of players because they know other teams aren't going to. There's a But yeah, it's hard to think of that, and I guess that's the old head mentality that we might have, right? Where it's like, how can you not pick this guy? Why is he not a lottery pick?
Right.
And so that's a tough one for him. But there's a lot of good guys coming out, and when you look at college basketball next year, I mean, geez, yes, there's great recruits always coming in, but they're losing a lot from guys that played in this tournament and these star type.
Well, I
What do
will say,
you
I think the D is it still called the D League?
G
Is that what
League,
it's called?
D League? It's either
Whatever
G
it
League or D
is.
League. G League, right?
Yeah, G League maybe. How they were having top prospects just go there and
Right.
play. That's kind of going away with nil
Right.
because you're not getting paid as much
You're gonna
doing
make more
college.
money in the NIL, right? And
Yeah,
staying in college basketball now, which so that can help college basketball help the universities get more, you know, higher talent level players. So that's a good thing too. And then a lot of these, a lot of guys that don't get drafted, are going to go to the, G League anyway. So why? I don't understand that. I would rather see people not drafted, right, go to the G League and play than to see young talent go there
right.
that could go to college. Because hey, guess what? You also get a college degree. That's a pretty good thing, right?
You
Well,
would
a
think
lot of them can, but not all of them. But
most of them don't. If you're good, you're like 90% of them are going for like, I'm going to take sociology and then
right,
not,
they can always go back, right?
you know,
Well, you got a lot of good seniors though this year. That's what I was kind of looking at, right? Of all the guys leaving, and there are a lot of seniors coming out, that played a long time and really going to change the landscape of college basketball next year. They're already looking like Duke at number one, the way too early top 25.
gosh,
But
you haven't
because
even
they're
had
going
people
to
announce who's leaving or not.
still have that. There's a couple people like Carolina's in that situation where if they lose, but they're going to reload because it's Carolina, but not like when you're already losing Baycott and then you may lose RJ Davis, and so that's tough. But a lot of UConn, they could lose their whole starting five,
Right.
so that's tough too. And but they're they'll still come in at a top five probably because you won the championship and
Yeah. How far will Iowa dip?
yeah. Oh
Or
man,
Purdue? I'm sorry, Purdue.
or Purdue. I thought you meant Iowa on the women's side. They're going to dip real
Yeah.
hard, but yeah, Purdue's definitely going to. Well, they still have them ranked high in that, but I don't believe they'll play like that.
Right.
They have some decent players, but I think they had them at like six, and I'm like, no way.
Supposedly they have a 7-2 player also that will be taking over for Edie.
I mean, that's helpful if you're going to stick with the same type of offense for
Yeah.
sure. But that 7-2 guy has to be good at,
Right.
doing it. Otherwise, you're not going to help you doing yourself any favors. Yeah, and you're like Iowa. I was like, man, what's Iowa, the women's team, going to look like now? Well, because they talk a lot about Caitlin Clark, and she did so much heavy lifting for women's basketball, and that's great. Another thing, but we've talked about this before. The reality is she went to Iowa, and even that people still know Caitlin Clark from Iowa, but you have a chance as a top recruit. Where are you going? You're not going to Iowa generally, right?
Right.
And no matter how
But
good Caitlin Clark was, I'm not going there because Caitlin Clark went there. I'm going to LSU or South Carolina or UConn or
right.
USC where I'm going to win some championships.
Or
So
there's a
that's
pedigree set.
right. So I mean, it's yeah, it's great things, but I don't think Iowa's a beneficiary of that. Basketball
No,
was been a huge beneficiary, but Iowa themselves, because they're also losing their other good seniors with her, you know,
right.
and so they're going to have a tough time being competitive again. So we'll see how that goes for them. It's kind of speaking of USC for a second. Bronny James obviously is the talk of the town right now.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of negative, some positive. Like where do you stand on him? And going to the draft, how's he gonna get drafted? How's he gonna do?
If he goes to the draft, he's only getting drafted because of his dad.
Right.
Because LeBron has come out and said, I want to go where Bronny is. So that's the only reason someone's going to draft him is because, oh, I get LeBron for a year or two. Because I'm sorry, Bronny like averaged like 4 points a game.
Right. Well, I mean, they had what's his name, Collier though.
He's still 4 points a game, and you want to
Yeah.
get go in the draft for 4 points a game?
That's the tough part. Statistically, you look at that and you're like, wow. And then you watch how he played. I don't know if you watched any of their games, but he was not particularly
He
impressive
wasn't.
either,
Yeah, I heard that he's probably going to go to Duquesne.
and not enter the draft.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, he's made some comments, and analysts are already doing all their breakdowns. So I don't think he's NBA ready. I don't know that he may ever be NBA ready, to be
no,
honest
I
with
don't.
you.
I think
Uh,
his other son is more NBA ready.
Yeah, that's I've heard that thrown around. But why would somebody like Skip Bayless come out and say Bronny's the most NBA ready prospect in the draft?
Well, then obviously it's complete BS because you can't believe anything Skip Bayless says. What does he know? I mean, come on.
Like, why would you even say that though?
He's kissing LeBron's butt. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't know, but you're right. I mean, they've talked about that before where, LeBron definitely wants to play with him. So it is you get one with it.
Yeah,
And I mean, LeBron, I mean, obviously you can't argue his success and his ability. And it doesn't look like he's slowing down too much. Yeah, he's getting older, but he's still putting up stats.
all right. My problem with LeBron is he is a coach killer and he sets back your team years after because he wants to be the GM.
Yeah.
And so he's going to make you trade good assets. Look what he's done to the Lakers, what he did to the Cavs. I mean,
Yeah, it's tough but if you're trying to win a championship, and you have some pieces,
right,
it's hard not to be like, well, that's a pretty good piece to add, because when you look at some of the teams, like let's take like the Celtics, right? They're not going to go after a guy like LeBron, but if you have a lower and mid-range team who wants to compete with the Celtics,
right.
that's a pretty quick way to grab a piece to do that.
Golden State going to get LeBron.
Oh, gee, that would be hilarious. Yeah, so I mean, I thought that was an interesting. There's a lot around that. I definitely don't see him as the best prospect. I think that's crazy, but um, it does sound like he's going to enter, so we'll see. That's an interesting one.
Well, and you talk about nepotism in Hollywood. That is like the biggest nepotism right
Right.
there. Because LeBron's not stupid. When he's the one that he wanted his son to be, he knew his son was probably not going to be drafted
Yeah.
at all. And then when he goes, well, I want to play where he's at.
That helps. Helps a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, yeah, you can look at all the statistics, but you don't know how he trains different and what he looks like, what the NBA looks like for him too. Maybe it takes him a few years to get going, which is why LeBron's thinking that, hey, if I go there with him in 2 or 3 years, he might be a lot better. So, speaking of NBA, you know how you got your Knicks coming up here in the playoffs, looking like they're third. Um, Giannis just gets hurt in the Celtics game. That would be tough going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, Dame.
Yeah, you go there and then Giannis gets hurt right before the playoffs.
Well, yeah, right now the Knicks are one game out of second.
Yeah, but there's only like 3 games left, right? So it's right there on the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, but the Bucks are the team ahead of them, so
Yeah. Yeah, which is not good for the Bucks.
right. So if
You
they're
know, interesting thing about Boston, like I don't know if you saw Boston's record and things like that, and just statistically and watching them play, like Tatum's definitely not getting his due right now. Like he's just playing amazing, and I feel like he doesn't get enough respect. Like he's almost leading the team in every stat. I mean, definitely points, rebounds, and he's right there in assists. So it's Boston looks tough.
they're the only team that's going to win 60 games this year.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, competition, has kind of evened out a little bit.
Right. I mean, from you got the Timberwolves, Nuggets, Thunder, Clippers, Mavericks all bunched together for the West.
Right. Yeah, Minnesota, they look pretty tough. Anthony Edwards, man, that guy,
Yeah.
I know everybody always makes the Jordan comparisons, which so I'm not going to make a Jordan comparison, but the way he dunks, the way he gets off the floor, his springs are crazy. And as he's developing his offensive game, when he starts putting up 50 points a night like he did,
Right.
like that makes it real dangerous. So it's Minnesota and Denver. That's going to be a battle for the Western Conference. Still have good teams though. Still got other good teams too. But we're not that far off of NBA playoffs, which is I do watch the playoffs.
The Bucks get the Magic twice and the Thunder. So they could lose all three of those games.
Yeah, who's the Knicks have though?
Oh, they got the Celtics as one of their
Oh,
games.
that's tough.
Yeah, and then it's Nets and Bulls. They
Yeah,
just beat
well,
the Bulls today by 11.
I
So
mean, they're winnable games, but
this is kind of weird. The Knicks played the Bulls three times in their last six games. They're not even the same.
right.
That's kind of weird scheduling.
Well, if they won the games, then that might not be bad for them.
Yeah, they lost to the Bulls the first one, so they're 1-1. But they also beat the Bucks in their last three games.
Yeah, I think the Knicks got a chance for sure. They could be I
Well,
mean, it doesn't
Randall's
matter where
out
they
for the
come in at the
season
three
now,
seed.
so
What's that?
Julius Randall's out for the season,
Oh, that's tough.
but
Yeah.
OG is back. Yeah, they were winning all their games without Randall or OG.
That just goes to, talk about, how good a depth they have, you
Yeah.
know, playing like a team.
Thibodeau, man, he's a great coach.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I mean, I guess the last as you think about that NBA, like Wembanyama, the the Spurs. It's like the Spurs are look like the worst team in the league, and there's all this talk about, I know he's great, he's a good player, right? But isn't it tough to build around and bring all that back from with just one guy? That's a lot of pressure on him too.
Right. Yeah, right now they're the fourth worst team in the NBA.
Well, so yeah, so they're right there.
Yeah, Blazers are fifth worst.
They're not right there. They're horrible. um, I just think it makes it tough on Wemby when he's in that situation, and I hope they make some serious moves sooner than later. Because if you go 3, 4 years with that type of team, right, and as that the player status he has, like that wears on you.
Yeah, I saw a meme out there that Popovich was, drafting Bronny
There you go.
so he could get LeBron on that team.
That might be the plan, right? Yeah, so NBA playoffs coming up. That'll be cool to watch. A lot of good talent though coming from college basketball to the NBA. So I think that's great, for them next year as well.
Well, going back to our college March Madness for a second, congratulations, Steve. You were the
Oh,
champion
that's right.
for our
Yeah, that's
March
right.
Madness tournament.
Take my March Madness bracket challenge home.
Now, I really when we were talking, if I would have picked UConn, I would have won.
Right. You
Remember
could
we
have.
were saying, oh, but no, I had taken the lead.
Yeah, with Purdue, right, making it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you would have went for UConn, you would have had
I know. We wouldn't even have to watch. It would have been over.
it.
But you had the best all around bracket out of the three of us. So that's why it would have been like if I would have had like snuck in because in the last, just having Purdue and UConn as my final two. It wasn't right. It was better because you had like most of your team still in it.
Yeah, and when I was making my bracket, I was just like, the easy thing would be just to pick Purdue all the way to the Final Four. But I was like, but if I could take Oregon and they make it, like nobody's gonna have that.
Right.
And so I mean I knew Purdue had been there and I'd had a lot more points if I would have had Purdue, going all the way, but not even all the way, just to the Final Four, at least. Because UNC or NC State was my sleeper
Right.
that I really thought they had a good chance to go to the championship game, even from the beginning of the tournament. They just got tired in that Final Four game,
Right.
and Edie was definitely a lot for them to handle.
Well, and that was what was kind of cool is you basically had in the women's and men's the four best teams.
Right.
It wasn't any like some screwy thing happen in that wise. And then UConn and South Carolina were the best teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, like you knew who was going to win. You just, some people hoped it would go some other way.
Yes, I did. I got far in my women's bracket because I had South Carolina winning it all.
Right. You're probably like 95 percentile.
Yes, that was always better in my women's bracket.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was still only like 90 percentile, even though I had a pretty good bracket.
Yeah, I had
But
what, seven of eight Elite Eight teams still in my women's bracket.
yeah.
And then my men's was like two.
Yeah, well, there was a couple teams that kind of threw you off, in the men's tournament, which,
Oh yeah, New Mexico completely. That was my bad. Stupid me picking them.
but that's also, like, you just
That was
really,
my NC State, and
that
they
was your
didn't do
NC
it.
State, right? That's like I said, that was a mistake. You can't take two NC States. I took two when I took Oregon too.
Well, once Wes said that New Mexico was in his Final Four, I should have like, uh-oh,
But
I
yeah,
gotta change
you should have
this.
known it wasn't going to go well. Yeah, Wes had a rough tournament, but it came down to the end. So I'll take it, take the win. All right. Well, what a season or what a tournament as well for college basketball. It was fun. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL here. So get into the NFL every. There's a lot less to talk about in the NFL right now because, like we said before, like we're at such a holding period right now for the draft,
Right.
and I feel like a lot of teams aren't going to make their move until right up to draft day. Maybe the day before, but maybe a lot of draft day trades.
Yeah, I won't be happy unless the Raiders get one of the top six quarterbacks.
Well, there's a good chance, and I watched it. I was looking at a lot of stuff. They're talking about Penix a lot lately, showing his pro day and kind of going through that. And it seems like the narrative is the NFL doesn't like him, but when you watch him and you watch him work out and you watch everything he's doing, that's kind of strange.
Hmm.
It's like he's not getting the looks.
I think it's the injury history is what.
Yeah.
um,
Well, that's a tough thing going to the NFL too, right? Because they're looking for long term.
Plus, he's left-handed.
There had to be Steve Young, he's left-handed.
Can you name five?
Yeah, there's not many, but yeah,
I can only name what Steve Young and Boomer Esiason, right? And
Michael
then
Vick.
was he a good passer though?
No, but I mean, he was a great quarterback. Like, you can't take away his
Right. Tua,
Tua's left-handed, right? So yeah, so you got Vick, Tua, Young,
Esiason.
Siason, right? There's not many.
No, I gotta get on that Google and see. I mean,
Like
Todd Marinovich,
Gradkowski.
but
I don't even know if Gradkowski was left-handed. He just threw so weird. I think he was left-handed.
Gradkowski?
Bruce Gradkowski, remember
No,
him?
he was right-handed.
But he had a weird throw. So
Oh, Wes would kick our butts if we didn't do this one. Mark Brun or Kenny Stabler.
oh yeah, and Mark Brunell. You just
Yeah.
mentioned him. He was left-handed, right?
Yep.
Stabler, yeah. I mean, you got to keep him up there. But even, I mean, Brunell wasn't bad, but he wasn't great.
Jim Zorn.
That's kind of interesting. He's just overshadowed by Dave Craig, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to love Dave Craig to Steve Largent, dude. That was the combo.
Chicago great Cade McNown.
Dave McNown. I do remember that.
The hefty lefty, Jared Lorenzen.
Oh yeah, the guy that bloomed up to like 400 pounds and then when played
Yeah.
arena football.
Well, and then he was back up to Eli Manning. I think he won, technically got some Super Bowls.
He might have
Uh,
got one.
he didn't play, but
He might have got one ring because
yeah,
you're
he
not
got
leaving
one
him on the
ring
team.
with the Giants.
It was interesting to watch him in college. Like he was so good in college, but he was so, different being the big quarterback, 250, 280 pounds, probably
Yeah, and then
300. The guy was
he
huge.
passed away at age 38.
Yeah, I actually saw that. That was kind of sad because
But
that
his career NFL statistics: zero touchdowns, zero interceptions, 28 yards passing.
was he 1 for 1 at least?
No, because he had a passer rating of 58.3.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
So,
So he's like 1 for 4.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you think about it though. Gosh, that's not many good left-handers. But that doesn't mean Penix can't be a good one. Maybe he's the next Steve Young.
yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, he was 3 of 5 for 21 yards against the Packers. Yeah, he didn't have much at all.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
well.
rough. How would you be happy with Penix going to the Raiders?
Dream scenario where we're staying like not getting Jaden Daniels. Okay, Jaden Daniels is the dream scenario.
Yeah, he's off the
Dream
board.
scenario is best player available at 13, trade back into the first round and take Penix, or luckily have him drop to them in the second round.
Yeah, but let's just say you have 13, no trade.
I would just take him because I wouldn't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to gamble because, and I've seen other people like, well, no bubble, all these other teams don't need him, then we could wait. I'm like, yeah, doesn't mean someone's not going to trade back into the first round and
right,
take.
right, which is not uncommon.
Yeah,
Yeah, so but what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter when you get him. Like, is that a quarterback you'd be happy running the
yeah,
Raiders for a while?
yeah. I mean, I don't really want Bo Nix. I hope he goes to the Broncos. I'd rather have Penix. I'm not sold on Drake May, but I wouldn't be unhappy with him. McCarthy, I'm more high on McCarthy than you, but but we know what Penix is. We don't know what McCarthy is, right?
Right. Well, you don't know what McCarthy is at all yet, but you definitely know what you're going to get from Penix. Granted, now you talked about earlier, does he stay healthy?
Right. Well, that's like, see, with I don't think the Raiders need someone like a McCarthy who's got a super upside, but you don't know what's going to get because they were close to making the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And so you just want a competent quarterback. And O'Connell did okay, but he's a backup quarterback. And we know Minshew is okay, but he's not someone you want to have start either. Both of those guys, I would say, are like week 1 through 4 starters, and then the rookie takes over.
So you don't get a rookie. How does the Raiders season go next year if they don't draft a quarterback? They got to run with O'Connell and Minshew.
Well, it's going to be 500-ish, and that's the problem. People were like, well, we'll just wait till next year. Well, next year, you're still not going to be in a position to get a quarterback.
Yeah, you're still going to be in that 15 to
Right. And that's
16
where
maybe
the,
area.
that's what the Raiders have done the last few years. It's like, oh, okay, we don't really in the range to get that quarterback. Or they are, but it's like a crap quarterback class.
Yeah. Well, and that's the tough thing with this class too. It's like there are so many good quarterbacks that if you don't get one, you may feel like you missed out.
Right. Well, and then like next year, do you really want to deal with the Sanders? Right.
Well, and you're not going to be in a position to get him anyway.
But I mean, that's the thing is sounding like he's going to power play.
Right.
They're not going to go to whoever wants to draft him at like if he's the first pick overall. They're going to pull a Elway Manning thing and be like, no, I don't want to go there.
Right. Yeah. And not that there's bad quarterbacks coming because there are good quarterbacks coming, but just not as good.
Well, and we don't know too. So it's always that way. Like, you preseason and blah, blah, blah. And there'll be like, oh, this is the best players. And then like the season goes on and you're like, well, for instance, Keon Coleman, beginning of
Yeah.
the college football season, everyone's like, oh man, he's a top 10 pick.
I think he is. I
But he's
think he's
probably going
whoever
in the second round.
I know whoever gets him is getting a steal.
He's probably going to be like the eighth or ninth receiver taken.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're getting a steal with him. And maybe there's attitude problems, maybe there's work ethic problems that we don't know about. But physically and you watch tape of him, look at all the stuff he dealt with, quarterback wise, late in the season. Like, you just never know how his season would have went and finished. Maybe he goes into the playoffs, right? And he has 200-yard games, or whatever. Like he'd be a top five. So I think I don't think, and again, I don't know his other parts of his game, which that's how you never know what NFL prospects look at. But I think you're getting a steal if you're getting him in the second round.
Right.
No, am I going to take him over Harrison? Am I going to take him over Ndunze? No, of course not. I mean that's there's too many good receivers out there.
Right.
Yeah. So here's the thing I'm thinking about as well. So you look at Caleb Williams, right? So Caleb now at this point, there's just no questions anymore. It's kind of a done deal, right? Number
Unless the
one,
Bears decide on McCarthy.
yeah. I don't even think I think the question now has become whose goes number two. Is
Right. If it's
there
Daniels or May.
everybody's given up on the Caleb Williams conversation. But the conversation that I do want to have about Caleb Williams is look, you're going to the Bears. This I get it, they're making changes. You still have a defensive minded coach though, right? So now you got to hope your offensive coordinator comes in and doesn't run historic Bears offense, right? What do the Bears always rely on? They always rely on their defense, number one. They always rely on their running game, number two. And so, what does that do to a guy like Caleb Williams in his development and how long you keep him and how happy he is?
All right. Well, is it 5,000 yards the Bears have never had? Was that what it was?
They've never had a 4,000 yarder.
Is it 4,000? It
Yeah,
is 4,000. Yeah, that's crazy. Like they're the only team.
right. But it's because they've always been defense with a run game, like always. Doesn't
But
matter
they've
who
been
their coach
around
is.
since the existence. I think Sid Luckman was their best quarterback.
Right. I mean, when Rex Grossman's in the conversation, you have a problem.
Jay Cutler.
No, yeah. I mean,
It-
Cutler statistically probably is,
yeah.
right? But Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl and should have won it.
Right. Well, then you go to Jim McMahon.
Well, yeah, and that's a hard one because and I love Jim McMahon and he did a lot of great things. He actually was a pretty good quarterback, but the team he had, like it's just not fair to compare him to anybody else because when do you ever get a team like that? So
1 year too. Was sad.
well, I mean, they were good the year before, and
Right.
so but yeah, I'm just saying that it's hard to compare him with even a Cutler because Cutler had decent players, but never a team like that.
Right.
I mean, Grossman, he did have the defense that year, which would be similar to that 85 defense because they carried that team to the Super Bowl.
And then they're the ones that ruined it too.
Ultimately, yeah. Well, missed coverages, things like that. But then it's the same thing, right? You're going now, you play against Peyton Manning's Colts.
Right.
And it's not like,
Instead of Tony Eason, Steve Grogan, Patriots.
right. Or just even in that year, they're the teams they were around in the NFC just weren't playing that great. So that was interesting. But I'm just curious, like, how does Caleb Williams' development go? Like, is that a bad thing? Because being, obviously I've been a Bears fan forever and I've seen it all. I don't know that Caleb Williams is the best for us, for the type of offense, unless we're going to make this change, right? Are we now that we have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet, like it,
Well, let's see. If they take a Dunze,
right? Then
they're going to
they
throw the
have to.
ball.
You're committed, right? Yeah. If you go wide receiver or quarterback wide receiver, you're committing to.
Right.
But then what if
After
they come back
trading
and they're
for
like Dallas Turner,
right. After trading for Keenan Allen, if you go with a Dunze
Yeah.
with DJ Moore, who you already paid, right? So,
Well, they're easily a top three receiver squad at that point.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you get one of those top three receivers, you're solid. And I don't care who they get. I don't care if they get Neighbors or Harrison or Dunze.
Right.
Like I'll take any of them.
Yeah. Brock Bowers.
I would take Brock Powers to be honest with you. You know how brutal that would be to run a couple tight ends like Komet and Bowers?
Yeah, because they're totally different in what they
Yeah.
do. That's why, I was thinking, and crazy as it sounds, but the Raiders should take Brock Bowers.
Well, they need a tight end.
Well, they got Mayer last year.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
and he's still developed, so we don't know yet, right? But he played well.
yeah, I mean, he's not Laporta or upper echelon, but he's a good tight end. He'll get you like 800 yards, but he's a inline blocker and a possession guy. You team that with Bowers, you could put anywhere on the field.
Oh, I'm sure Devontae Adams would love that, right? Because even if you grab another great receiver, that doesn't help Devontae that much, you know. But another tight end who gets in the middle of the field and just stretches the linebackers and keeps the zone in, pulling up short, like that's what Devontae needs.
Right. Well, I think what also is hurting Bowers is Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean? Because
He didn't
Pitts was
help
a
anybody.
generational tight end and he did nothing. He's
Right.
done nothing.
Yeah, but Sam Laporta then helps the case a lot though too,
Right.
because
But
they're
yeah,
similar. Like Laporta and Bowers are similar in their style. So that's helpful for Bowers. I think also when you look at like this draft and you're like, is there a tight end that can make a difference right now in the NFL? Well, there is.
right. I think though we all think he should be a top 10 pick, but I'm seeing stuff where he's going like 18,
Yeah, I've seen some different ones. The biggest one I think, which is most likely, is the Jets, and that's what 11,
10.
10 or 11. Yeah, 10 or 10 because we're nine, they're 10. So yeah, so 10. So he might barely scrape that top 10.
Right. Because the top three receivers are gone. So they
Yep.
get the next offensive
Well,
weapon.
because look, because they just got Mike Williams, they already got Wilson,
They
Rogers
got some
coming back.
tackles. They
Yeah,
got some tackles in free agency.
get him a tight end, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. He could go a lot of places, to be honest with you, because you don't know. Like some people could take that chance on him, and be like, "We'll take him at 5," like the Chargers, because they kind of have the same thing. You got to support Herbert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Um, and then it's not like the Bears aren't going to draft Caleb Williams, but I just don't know how he's going to develop there. But you're right. If they do get that third wide receiver, they're really committed to it, which is why I think they should have got rid of Eberflus. Did he pull it out at the end of the year and make the team look decent? Sure, but he's not what you're building for right
Right.
now. You need somebody who's very offensive minded, and it takes also a defense to help you be offensive minded, right? You have to play the right defensive strategy too. He plays a lot of that bend but don't break defense, play very disciplined, and make the offense make mistakes. Doesn't take a lot of chances, doesn't blitz in the right situations.
Is he a cover three guy?
Not really. I mean, he runs a been he they ran a lot of different man and cover two man specifically because their corners played so well.
Gotcha.
And so they had a weird defense. But again, it was kind of like, let's not let people get over the top of us. That keeps your offense off the field a lot.
Yeah. Because it's the bend don't break. Let's give up a field goal, but not a touchdown.
Right. And so that hurts when you're that type of coach. That hurts your offense too. And so I could see that, all of that affecting their offense and Caleb Williams. Although I don't think we've ever drafted a real great quarterback before, so this will be the first time.
You've drafted lots of quarterbacks in the top 10, though.
I mean, not a ton, but yeah, I'm like guys like Cade McDown. I mean, typically they draft as bad as the Raiders.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're
Oh,
taking guys like what Kevin White
yeah.
in the top
Harry
10.
Hayward Bay.
All right, good. So that's tough there. Uh, so think about NFL right now for a second. We kind of talked about, teams that really did great in the offseason and how maybe the Texans move up like that. Are there any other teams that may are moving out of that mid-level, right? Like so here's an example, and I hate to use this as an example, but there's a lot of talk about the Packers. Packers obviously made the playoffs, did better than they ever should have done. They probably should have lost to Dallas. They made it a second round, but they have a super young team
Right.
and a lot of good young receivers, a pretty good coach, defense is solid. Like, are the Packers one of those mid-level teams now that are, primed to maybe make a run next year?
I guess it all depends on Jordan Love. If he, continues to develop and get better, then they will be good again, sadly.
Yeah, if he distributes the ball, he
They,
doesn't hone in on one receiver.
well, they got a good bunch of good receivers in second round and third round. So
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think, they're one of the teams that you look at and you're like, okay, when you look at the NFL last year, were there some mediocre teams that are going to get better? And I think they're one of those teams coming into that conversation. And then you have a team like Miami, who maybe can Miami stay in that conversation, or they've fallen backwards, right? Because they were right the same way. They were a playoff team. They looked great for a lot of the years, but at the end of the day, look what they did at the end.
well, Miami and Buffalo both lost tons of people in free agency. So, like, at least with Miami, your offense is intact. It's your defense that's going to be horrible. I mean, Buffalo lost a lot though, but like Miami still has Hill, Waddle, Mozart, a chain. I mean,
Right. So yeah, you're right. I mean, they're gonna have to outscore people.
right.
Yeah, I don't even so Buffalo, they're gonna be a mystery, right? Because you don't know. You would on paper it looks like that they're gonna fall off pretty hard,
But they have Josh Allen.
but
So
they have
that,
Josh Allen, who's pretty good.
right. And that's why when people are like, you know, why would you don't give up a bunch of draft picks to get a quarterback? I'm like, look at Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
Joe Burrow. How fast those guys change those teams around.
Yeah. Well, and there's guys that, on Mahomes, you know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, everybody like, yeah, I get it. You passed up on what is now the best quarterback in the league, but it's not like the dude went the second round.
No.
It was a very deep quarterback class, a lot like this one.
No, the more is what when the Ravens got Lamar Jackson at like 32.
Yeah, so that's a huge steal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like everybody talks about Mahomes like he's the big steal, but they didn't really steal him. He was just happened to be still available at that top
Right.
10.
It was just more, like the Marino thing, but actually not because he still went number what, 10?
Right. That's
But
what I'm
there was
saying. He
what,
was 10.
two quarterbacks taken before him?
I think there was three, right?
Was that the Darnold and Trubisky? Is that
Yeah. No. Uh yeah, there was two. Because that was Deshaun Watson, right?
was it Watson? I'll check here.
Yeah, I think
Because
that was
Watson would have
Watson.
gone Watson went after Mahomes too, didn't he?
Yeah, what did Watson go? 22?
Okay, so that's the Miles Garrett draft. Yeah, so goodness gracious, come on.
Didn't
Yeah, so Trubisky went to yeah, so only the Bears because then Mahomes went 10, Watson went 12.
yeah, see, yeah, it's again, you had one quarterback go in front of him, right? And that was a bad choice by the Bears.
Well, and then, TJ Watt was in that draft too. He went 30th.
Yeah, that's a tough pick though. Nobody knew. I mean, everybody knew he's going to be good, obviously, but not that
Everyone knew that he was going to get drafted by the Steelers.
good.
That was the thing.
Yeah, but he's played way above expectations. Because it's like Nick Bosa, right? You knew he was going to come in, you knew he was going to play great, and he has. TJ Watt was like, hey, we know he's going to be an impact player, but not the best defensive player in the league.
Right.
That's the tough part there. But yeah, I mean, same point. The point about Mahomes is like, again, there's only one quarterback ahead of him, and he was a top 10 pick, right? So like missing out on that. But so Atlanta's the other one I wanted to ask about. So Atlanta, you had Cousins. Does that move Atlanta now into that above the mid, or just stay at the mid? Can Atlanta compete now?
They can make the playoffs, but that's about it. They're still not very. I mean, it's Kirk Cousins. He's okay.
Yeah.
He'll get you to the playoffs, but you know what? Derek Carr's the same. He's okay too. So the Saints can get to the playoffs. You know what? Baker Mayfield's okay too. The Bucks can. So it's not like I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons still didn't make the playoffs.
So yeah, because to me those are all mid teams, right? At best. So can Atlanta then make that jump, win the division, maybe win a playoff game?
I don't know about win a playoff game, but they can make it to the playoffs. Well, I
Kirk
guess if
Cousins
they
can't
played
win when it matters, right?
if they played Dallas in the playoffs, yeah, they can get a
There you
win.
go. Like so now you got Kirk Cousins against Dallas in the playoffs. That's a matchup.
Well, I did read something today that the Cowboys are thinking of drafting a quarterback.
They should. I mean, you got to have something ready at some point for Prescott
Well,
when
they got
it
Trey
comes to
Lance.
yeah. I've never been a Trey Lance fan, so that can't really that one doesn't hit me.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're talking value, you're like, oh, I got a top three pick or whatever.
Right.
Then you're going to go draft a quarterback at like 25.
Yeah, but nobody was like, "Hey, we got Ryan Leaf, we got Rick Meyer."
I think the Bears traded something good for Rick Meyer.
Oh, the Bears love that number two quarterback position. They're like, "How can we screw this up?" So yeah, I mean, if the Cowboys want to move on from Dak, they're going to need better than Trey Lance, though.
Yeah.
Especially with the Cowboys culture, they have a winning expectation of winning in the regular season, at least. So I don't know that Trey Lance would last long because he's going to need some time. He's never really had the field time because he got injured. Then you get benched, and so it's like you don't have the field time. He's gonna have to play for a season or two if you really want him to replace Dak.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So back to the Rick Meyer. The Bears traded a first round pick for him.
Of course they did.
It turned out to be Sean Springs.
Right.
And then they released him the next year.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Well,
Wow.
it's the same. The Bears never have done well with quarterbacks. It's not anything I've ever expected. So
Yeah, that is crazy. He had 420 yards passing with the Bears in 7 games.
yeah, he got replaced by now I can't remember who came in.
He had 0 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for the
Yeah.
Bears.
No, it was so bad, man.
Uh,
Yeah, he didn't last long at all, and then you give a first round draft pick for him.
yeah.
Yeah, no luck. No luck. Yeah, so Cowboys, I mean, I think they're going to give it another year, right? So Beck's not going anywhere, at least for a year, maybe two. So I don't know if the Cowboys really need a quarterback yet,
Who knows? Dion might make his son go there.
right? Only playing for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Eagles, they set up pretty well still, even though they kind of feel like a mid team last year, the way they played and the way they finished. They still are in that position to be a mid to better team. But yeah, those are kind of the main teams like Green Bay, Atlanta. You like wonder how Miami's going to do in that mid range. The Raiders, how are they going to do in that mid range? I don't know. You don't know how a team like the Bears are going to do because you just saw it with the Texans with C.J. Stroud. If Caleb Williams comes out and plays great, they may be a problem. But if he comes out and plays like Bryce Young, then they may not be a problem.
Well, the issue is you got the Lions and the Packers. Both are going to be tough outs,
Yeah.
and you don't know what's going to happen with the Vikings.
Yeah, Vikings have good players. They just need that quarterback piece. If you're the Vikings right now, like we talked about this before, you have to go all in, right?
Yeah,
And it has to be. I mean, I guess your argument would be it could be J.J. McCarthy at a four, but for me, it has to be Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams. So you're not getting Caleb Williams,
well, it's just you have to see if that's the whole thing. Are the Commanders or Patriots wanting to trade?
right? But like I said, they're gone, right? So we're in that fourth position. Vikings still got to have a quarterback.
Right?
Like, what are you gonna do? You gonna wait? You gonna wait to see maybe if you get Nix or Penix later?
I doubt it. They got two first rounders now, so they're doing something.
But then it's like now you're gonna trade two first rounders, maybe three for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
And like we said before, when we said this many times, is he could be good, could be really good. We could not, right? We just don't know.
But how many people are good with Justin Jefferson, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
could make him good.
And Addison, and
Yeah,
Hawkinson. It's not like have a limit
right.
of talent
It's not
on.
like it's not like Bryce Young.
Yeah, it is. That is a big difference in those two situations. If you're gonna, yeah, make a Bryce Young to say a JJ Redick or JJ Redick, JJ McCarthy, JJ Redick could have been a good quarterback. You never know. He's got the height. Was he like 6'4", 6'5"?
Yeah, he's pretty fragile though.
Yeah, but I mean, like McCarthy, that he's got a lot more weapons, so that would be good. But then again, like how much can you give up, like for McCarthy?
It's a problem supply and demand right now.
Yeah,
If the three quarterbacks go one, two, three, then it becomes more like
a little bit
the
of desperation.
The Cardinals or the Chargers are going to trade out
Yeah,
because I mean, someone's going to give them something that's good.
yeah. Well, you're getting that king's ransom at that point, right? Because
Yeah,
you're holding them hostage.
yeah,
Because so the worry for a lot of teams is going to be that you just don't know what the Giants are going to do.
right.
The Giants are the wild card here because you can't wait to that. Because if you wait to the Giants and then the Giants like, great, we wanted this guy here, we're going to take him. We wanted a quarterback. We didn't say it, but we'll take McCarthy right out from underneath you.
Mhm.
So that's it. The Giants are definitely a wild card there.
Well, and that's the other thing that's funny is that's what this season, you know, it's lion season. The Giants might be putting it out there because they want Neighbors or Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they
then
want
they're
somebody
like,
else to move up in front of them, take the pick that was going to take, you know, Harrison or Neighbors.
yeah,
At this point, though, I mean, I know there's so many picks that the Chargers could take, but how do you not take a receiver with what's available?
they might just wait for the second round. I mean, that's the thing is like some people value the receivers, but then you can get a really good receiver in the second round, and they might want to take Alt, right?
Yeah.
Or trade back and get more picks.
It kind of changes the situation, though, if, say, Minnesota moves to four, because the McCarthy's their only option. You know, they
Right.
have to go
Then I
McCarthy.
think
Now you're
like
at five with options like anybody,
yeah.
you know,
Then you
because
got the number one pick pretty much besides quarterback,
right, because and you don't
which
need
is
a quarterback.
perfect for the Chargers, which I hate because they don't need a quarterback. So they get the
Yeah,
number one player that's not a
yeah,
quarterback.
because Minnesota has to make a move, right? They can't not.
Right.
And even if that's like talking Washington into going back to four, you know, or going maybe they trade back, you know, with Arizona to get back up to a quarterback, right?
Right.
Because if let's say Minnesota goes to two and gives up three draft picks, three first rounders, it's pretty easy for then Washington to say, hey, Arizona, give us four and we'll give you a couple of their picks or even one or pick and then next year's pick, you know?
Well, that's the thing. They're going to have to trade two firsts just to move to four, and then maybe three to move to two.
That's what I mean. If they go to two, they're giving up the ransom to them, right?
Well,
Like,
they have to give it up to the Cardinals first, then to get, then that will be like, well, Commanders, we have four, and these other picks, but at least you don't have to fall too far. And if you want McCarthy, you can have him at four.
yeah, but they do that this three-way trade ahead of time all the time where you know Washington the Commanders can make a deal with the Arizona before they agree to the deal with Minnesota to go to two, right? So they can say Minnesota can go to two with what they're going to offer, and then before Washington makes that decision, they're like, "Hey, Arizona, here's what we'll give you to go back to 11 or whatever Minnesota was at."
Right.
Which because you don't have, I mean, you don't have to offer a lot to Arizona to go back to 11 because they need everything.
Right. But they might be like, well, why should I move? I'm going to want something because someone's going to want JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, that's where the Commanders have to come back to if they move back, though. They can't. They need a quarterback too. So it'll be, you know, the Patriots are in there. You never know what the Patriots are going to do at three. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right. Well, let's get into next topic. We got our top five Denzel movies. So top five Denzel Washington movies is a tough one. A lot of movies here.
Yeah. And you know what? I picked mostly old, I guess it's older movies now.
Well, it's tough because, you know, we've had our top five actors, you know, and I picked Denzel there, and I'm sure he's in, you know, a lot of people's top fives. That just it makes it there's so many movies that, you know, they've been
Right.
in when they're one of the better actors out there. And most of those are good. So this was a tough one. I think I'm willing to bet our lists are going to be quite different. One, because there are so many movies, but it's hard to eliminate when you're trying to like take down to the top five, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think I have any of his action movies.
Oh, interesting. Nice. Well, because he has such such a range, it doesn't even matter, right?
Right.
And not just his acting range, but his range of movies, like the different styles of movies that he's done over the years. All right, here we go. Number five in the top five, Denzel. So I'll start. I don't know if you consider that when you said action, that kind of threw me off. So I have Training Day here, which I love Training Day. I think he does a great job in the movie. That Ethan Hawke also does a great job. It's a good story line. You don't often see. I don't know if you ever see Denzel play this part, right? It's just a unique part for him. He plays it well, and overall, it's just a good movie too. It's really intense, and so I took Training Day at five.
I got Mo Better Blues at five. Cool Spike Lee movie with Denzel as a trumpet player or sax. No, he's trumpet. Yeah, and Wesley Snipes is saxophone. It's a. I haven't seen very many old school movies in a while, but that was one I always enjoyed when it was on TV. I liked Mo Better
Right.
Blues. I'm a big Spike Lee guy, so
Well, and they did a lot together.
yeah,
I think you could probably do a top five just them.
right.
And still your top five would be pretty good.
Yep.
But yeah, it's one of those older movies I always liked. It wasn't a movie though that I watched the same way though. I didn't watch it too many times over and over again, and you could because it's so old. I mean, some of those old movies, we've seen like 50 times now,
Right.
maybe more. All right, what do you got at four?
Four, I've got Training Day. And the only reason it's not higher is because I've only seen it one time. And it's crazy. I've only seen it one time. And when I
Yeah.
watched it, I was like, this is a really good movie. And I actually own it, but I still have never watched it again. It hasn't been, but I just remember it was such a good movie, but it wasn't one that I wanted to keep watching over and over again.
Yeah, you pick up a lot on its mannerisms, when you see it multiple times, which makes the movie even better. But yeah, it's got to be up there, right? It's such a great movie. I'm surprised you haven't seen it multiple times though. That is kind of strange.
Yeah, I know. It is strange.
Maybe it's I mean, it's not the super easiest movie to watch.
Right. I'm not, that doesn't really bother me though, because I watch like,
Right.
the gritty movies all the time.
Well, it doesn't lack that.
No,
My number four, I have Crimson Tide, which when him and Hackman together, it's great. I love that. That's my kind of movie. That's my type of storyline. It's just got enough military with action, with drama to make it, really my type of movie. And it really helps, to have Gene Hackman in the movie too. But I think he plays the perfect. He's not like Denzel in this. He plays the perfect like XO, right? He plays the perfect second in command. And that's just what you would kind of think the two at that time of when the movie was made and when it was supposed to be set. You'd be like, that would be Captain and XO as just as I had expected to be. And they both really portray that. So I definitely really, and that's one of the older ones I've seen a lot on TV. That's when I'll go back and be like, oh, that's on TV, back when we watched TV.
yeah,
All right, so let's see. Number three. This might not be in everybody's top five, but I don't know. I love this movie. I thought he did a great job. And this is Malcolm X. He just really portrays the part, and I don't know, he looks like he just really got into this part and just played it with a lot of passion. And it's a good story, of it's one of those he does a lot of those based on reality, right? Based on a true story stuff. And he's really good at it. And I think he just kills that part. So I got Malcolm X at 3.
I have Malcolm X at 3 also. I don't think our lists are going to be too different, Steve.
No, the last two got to be different.
I don't know. I kind of have a feeling they're not going to be. Um, yeah, so like you said, Malcolm X, that was like he played that part so well. Like you could think it was Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Damn mannerisms, everything.
Yep. And yeah, it's like you're watching a documentary. Yeah, it was good. That was really good. I thought he did a great job. But he did a great job in a lot of them, which made this really hard. Because he's so good at that, just taking over the character, encompassing the character. All right, well, what do you got at 2?
I got Remember the Titans at 2.
And why do you have that there?
I mean, it's one of the best football movies around, and it's just a great story. And it's just a great movie. And he's the leader. And that's why that's like when I think of Denzel Washington. He's tough, but he can be funny. And yeah, so yeah, Remember the Titans at 2.
Well, I guess our list was a lot closer than I thought. Uh, I remember the Titans at 2 as well. Same thing, it's like he is the coach. He's exactly who you thought that coach would be, what he'd be like in that time, in what that's happening in that city, and but he has like a lot of range in that movie where it's he's playing the tough guy, but he's playing the good coach, and sometimes he's the nervous guy, and then he's the family man. He really did a good job of playing that part. And the story of that, it's everybody loves it, and that's a movie I have watched too many times. But I guarantee our number ones aren't the same. There's no way, because this is nobody else's number one but mine.
Yeah, you want me to do mine
No,
first?
I'll tell you what it is. It's Courage Under Fire.
Okay.
And the reason it's not anybody else's number one is because I think, maybe I don't know, but a lot of people don't understand the depth of this movie. There's so much depth in this movie, not just by Denzel as the lead, but with the story, with the people that are in the story with him. But it's just like you have the story of him doing an investigation, and you have the story on top of the story, which is him and his own thing with his own war, with the tanks, and then the story on top of that, which is like then the woman getting the medal in the army at a time when that wasn't right or fashionable or whatever they want to do it, and then the story within the story of it was all a lie, so I mean it's so deep of a movie, and it's played really well by Denzel himself. He plays the character perfectly, but then you've got really good supporting actors that do a great job.
Matt Damon lost like all that weight for it.
Right.
Oh,
Play that part, and he plays it perfectly, and then even Lou Diamond Phillips, like you could not pick a better person to play that part as he played in there, right? And so yeah. Oh, and then again, and that's probably nobody's number one list that I looked at and researched, but people thought nobody would ever put it there, but I don't think they're watching the movie right. So what do you got at 1?
well, you got me there. So that's not, I know that's a good movie. I was looking at that. But my number one's got to be his first Academy Award and one of his first movies. Man, it's Glory. It's got to be Glory. Directed
Yeah.
by the same guy that did Courage Under Fire,
Right.
Edwards.
But he does that with a lot, like Spike Lee and Tony Scott, and a lot of people. But I mean, Glory's great. I mean, how can you argue? how good of a movie Glory is.
Saw it in middle school at, I don't know how, but we saw it in at the middle school. It
Yeah,
was
we were able to
actually,
watch movies like that in school back then.
yeah. I mean, because I was like, my wife's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we got to watch a rated R movie. We must have had permission slips and stuff for it.
There was no
Oh,
permission slips, dude. We just watched them. It's not like you went home and you're like, "Hey, I watched Glory at school today."
right,
Yeah, I mean it's a great movie. There's and it's easily could be top five, and I had it on my list. But there's a lot of good acting in that movie, though.
right. I just for him because it was, because he was in Saint Elsewhere
Yeah,
years, and this was his like he had one movie, The Mighty Quinn, which was, a standard fare movie, and then this movie put him on the map.
yeah, he broke out for sure. Yeah, it's such a good movie too to break out with, and just the performance.
And
Same
just the
thing.
ending just like is a gut punch, but
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not. It's not easy to watch, but he plays a lot of those types of roles, though. Even when he's like Philadelphia, for example, right?
Mhm.
Every lot talks about Tom Hanks in Philadelphia, but you watch his role in that, and what a great role he played, and how the same thing. It's just like the whole time you're like, oh man, that's a tough.
See, that's another one. It's like it's a really good movie, and I've seen it a couple times, but I'm like, that's not one I want to like. Oh, Philadelphia's on. I'm gonna watch that.
It's not fast by any means.
But it's got like great acting,
Yeah,
and that's movies I love movies with great acting.
yeah.
TV
I
shows,
think
great acting. I just
this list, like, kind of, there was so many movies on that. I was really at like about a 15 mark when I was looking through his movies and saying these 15 are really interchangeable. Because
well, yeah, we didn't even mention, He Got Game or Inside Man, other
right,
Spike Lee movies you could go on with.
yeah, Inside Man's great. I mean, or like a Man on Fire. There's Glory, same thing. Like I had to like choose if I wanted to put Glory in or not. Um, there's so many, and then there's some of the ones that like he did small where he was kind of part of producing and directing the movies. Like Antoine Fisher is a really good movie. He had another one I hadn't seen in a long time, but it's a little older one, which was really good too, that he was part of. But then when you have these other movies where big productions like Flight was a huge production, people really love that. Um, for me, that's still up there, but it's more of that big popcorn type that I like this type of movie, when he's really, really at his best.
Well, one, but it was just too long. It could have been cut, and or they could have done different. He did a great job, but I felt like they could have done differently on the story was American Gangster.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. Like the only reason I can't put that on there is because that movie's 100% because of him. Yeah, it's a long, hard movie to really get into, but he plays, what's his name, Frank Booth
Frank Lucas.
or Lucas, Frank Lucas. Yeah, he plays Lucas perfectly.
Yeah. And I mean, I would have liked, I don't know, less about Russell Crowe's character and more about his.
Yeah,
That's like I would have had more like if with him with Bumpy Johnson and stuff.
or just get more, yeah, more into his life in general.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of Russell Crowe in that movie, which brings it down a little bit as far as like how good of a Denzel movie is it?
right.
But it's still a great movie. That's definitely was on my list 100%. Yeah. And then there's other little movies, like John Q and Deja Vu, which don't get as much credit because all his other movies are so good. But I love Deja Vu. I thought it was a great movie. John Q, fun to watch. So
Well, and then his earlier kind of action, Virtuosity.
yeah,
And then what was the Ricochet?
Ricochet, dude, John Lithgow, dude, that was
Yeah,
great. Love that one. Yes, yeah, there's a lot, that you can just go through so many of them. As I was, just kind of look at my list and build my list, I already had a little bit of an idea of what I thought, but then as you go through, it's just like, how can you have that many good movies?
right. Well, and that's the thing. Most of the movies I was looking nowadays, though, he's just doing action.
Well, he really got into the that. So, I mean, you know how it got recently when they get into those what's Equalizer became that, series type thing, and that takes up a lot from you because you can't take all the movies that you want to take, right?
Right.
And then you get a little bit typecast,
Yeah.
in that role. And it's not just typecast, that's all you want to do, but it's typecast because they're like, hey, dude, here's $20 million.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Well, yeah,
What do you
because he
make for
did.
Ricochet? Like 500?
Yeah. Well, because he did Book of Eli,
Yeah.
Unstoppable, Safe House, Two Guns, and then the Equalizer, then Magnificent Seven, and you got Equalizer 2 and Equalizer 3.
Yeah. Well, and then Unstoppable was a great movie too. I really, really like that. Safe House. I guess that for me, I think that was Ryan Reynolds kind of messed that one
Yeah.
up. But
Ryan
yeah,
Reynolds playing himself.
Book of Eli was easily on my list. It's one of my favorite action movies, or not action. It's just there's a lot of other stuff to it, but yeah, obviously you
Mhm.
have the gunfights and the action part of it. But Book of Eli is a great story. It reminds me of like a different type of Mad Max,
Right.
because it's in that same setting, the apocalyptic setting. So I mean that's tough overall. Like there's so many, honorable mentions or ones on the list that it's real hard to take off. Um, I heard Pelican Brief a lot too.
I feel that more of a Julia Roberts movie, though.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's real hard. He's played so many major roles in his movies, because I mean, you could argue Crimson Tide, same thing with Gene Hackman, right?
Well, that's
Um,
an Inside Man is more Clive Owen. You know
Clive
what I
Owen,
mean?
right? Yeah. So, but the fact that the roles he plays in those, that's what makes him really good. And even if you don't feel like he might be the main, he still feels like the main in a lot of those.
Right. Well, even could say Ethan Hawke was technically the main in Training Day, right? Because
Yeah.
he was the hero,
Right.
technically.
Yeah, and he probably had more screen time.
Glory, that wasn't a whole ensemble cast.
Oh yeah, I mean you even had what's his name in it?
Morgan Freeman
Yeah, Morgan Freeman.
and Andre Brower and
Yeah,
yeah, Carrie Elways and Matthew Broderick.
yeah. But I mean, at that time, you kind of feel like Morgan Freeman can overshadow,
Well, it was Matthew Broderick's movie, right? I
right?
mean,
But he
really.
was he was young, you know.
Yeah, but that was after Ferris Bueller and stuff.
Yeah, but still, I mean, dude, that movie was in '89.
Yeah. But Broderick had already done like War Games and I
Yeah,
mean,
I just meant physically, I mean, his acting skill was still great, still. I've always liked I thought he's top notch.
well, I'm just saying that was when he was at his highest peak.
Right? Yeah, he had a lot of popularity at that time.
Yeah, because War Games was 83, Ferris Bueller's 86. So yeah, because his big time was early 80s. Yeah, because he had Project X, he had Lady Hawk, War Games. Yeah, Biloxi Blues, even Family Business, the one with Dustin Hoffman and Connery before Glory.
Yeah, well, this was the first one. I mean, actually, obviously Ferris Bueller, but this is the first like this type of movie that he was in to kind of to setting around him. He was kind of the main.
Well, I think War Games and Project X, he was the main.
Well, those weren't really very good movies.
What? War Games? Man, that was a super popular movie though.
I mean, I can compare that to Glory, are you?
No, I'm talking popularity. I'm talking movies people went and saw in the theater. And you're gonna have War Games and Ferris Bueller and Project X were all big
Yeah.
like movies.
How people we loved movies back then. Remember
Yeah,
that?
that was
Now you
crazy.
just
I
put
just
them
remember
on
going
Netflix or
to
Amazon.
a movie theater and it being sold out.
To where?
Going to just do a movie and it'd be
Oh
sold
yeah,
out.
yeah, all the time, man. I mean, especially when you had one movie theater real close to you. There wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of like driving to far. You didn't drive far to go to movies.
No, I remember Joe and I went to Mall 205 to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when that first came out, and it was sold out.
Yeah, I went to quite a few sold out movies to try to get tickets. I was like, that was rough. All right, well, that's the top five Denzel movies. So that was a tough one with a lot of good stuff. But although I did realize mostly that there's a few movies I need to go back and watch again. And then there was like a couple I hadn't seen. So
Yeah, maybe let's see.
there's I definitely have a few on my list that I can add to my time to watch list or want to watch again.
Looks like I'm watching Training Day tomorrow.
Training Day tomorrow. Yeah, I'll. There's a couple, like I said, I hadn't seen that. I'm a little disappointed. I hadn't seen like the Great Debaters. I'm a little disappointed. I haven't seen that
Right.
because he was a big part in the production of that too. And it's another one of those like based on a true story. It's like, dude,
Right.
half of that guy
Well,
did was that.
we didn't talk about Hurricane, another one based on a true story.
Yeah, yeah, which was a great movie. That's one I've only seen once, that's an interesting one.
Well, that's just another one that just would gets my blood boiling type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, well, we'll wrap it up here with any final thoughts. We got NCAA ending, NBA playoffs beginning, NFL draft. We've got that in what, 14 days, 16 days, 16 days?
Yeah. 16 right now, but yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so about a couple of weeks, you got the draft, you got the NBA draft, uh,
WNBA draft.
WNBA draft. Oh, I guess that's a good final thought. Um,
Well, the Masters is this weekend, right?
yeah, Masters. They have pre stuff tomorrow, and the tournament starts on Thursday.
And I sent you that menu, which is amazing.
Yeah, how are they selling stuff so cheap at the Masters, but yet we're paying $12 for a cheeseburger?
Well, you should have seen that was I saw WrestleMania prices for their concessions, and it was like $17 for two chicken fingers,
Right.
all a cart.
And these guys are getting full menus for $2 and $3.
I know. I was like, oh, looking at this, I'm like, man, I would get like myself a barbecue chicken sandwich. I would get myself a pimento. I'll
you,
get this.
you know, Augusta is a rich, super rich country club, right?
I don't even know. It's like I might just spend the whole time eating if I went
Yeah.
there.
That's probably why they have such good prices because people are just buying food the whole day. I mean, it's tough to watch a golf tournament. You're either walking a lot or
You're
you're
just
not seeing a
standing.
lot of action.
Yeah. You're just at one hole
Right.
watching that.
Right. Well, and it takes a lot longer sometimes when you see it on TV because they're switching most of the time because you're waiting for them to get ready to play their shots. And a lot of
Right.
times they're waiting for the guys to get off the green in front of them. So there is a lot of sitting watching.
Right.
Yeah, so they're that food prices was crazy. Like you got this super rich country club golf tournament, and they're paying a third of the price we're paying for a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Uh, Caitlin Clark, though, the finish, finish with Caitlin Clark for a second. She there's talk. Like, I know it's not necessarily true or gonna happen or whatever, but how so they keep talking about drafted to the NBA. How does that work? How would that work? Could you have Caitlin Clark on an NBA basketball team?
I don't know. It's a hard one because it's not the MNBA. It's not the, you know what I mean? Like the WNBA, it says it's the women's NBA.
Well, yeah, because the men's NBA, there is no rule that women can't play or be drafted.
Right. But the women's NBA does have a rule,
Right.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little getting a little more flexible these days, just because of what the things that are happening in the world. But yes, it's you have to be a woman drafted in the WNBA, but Caitlin Clark could definitely get drafted into the NBA.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. A later first round pick, most of those are don't work out anyway, right?
But
So
can she even play on a team?
it's hard for us because we don't really watch the NBA anymore. So we can't really tell you if she could. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to see how fast she is, and I need numbers wise. I need to see that
Yeah.
stuff, like shuttle times and all that. She could shoot.
Right, but it's different, right? Because now you're gonna have somebody guarding you that
Right.
is probably bigger, stronger, faster, jumps higher,
If they
and
really
not
need you,
not
because
by
they
a
don't really
little
do
bit.
much
It's by a
defense.
lot.
And the only issue would be yes, it would be hard for her in the NBA because everyone would be trying to embarrass her.
Well, you're gonna have a lot of isolations, right? You're gonna have a lot of like, okay, clear
Posting,
outs,
yeah, posting her
posting,
up, yeah.
right? And so yeah, that's good. That's a part, but it's like if we're when we play basketball, saying we did the same thing, like identify who has the best matchup on the floor,
Right.
right? And get that person the ball if they have that. So I don't know how serious a lot of this stuff was, but regardless, it's tough for me to watch her play and then say, oh yeah, she could play on an NBA team.
Right. Well, considering you know what, she didn't win a championship, so she couldn't even carry her. I know it's a team sport,
Yeah.
but you're if she would have gone out there and been like willed her team to a victory and there was no stopping her and she was so much better than everyone else on the court, then I can see it. But it's not like she's, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar out there or whatever, like
Yeah.
LeBron James or
No,
she's
I mean
not
like
like
it's not particularly fast, not particularly big or strong, or she can shoot really well, but you have to she has to be open.
right.
And it's really gonna be hard to get open.
Well, and you got WNBA players saying that she's gonna rude awakening when she comes to the league.
Yeah. Well, because you saw a couple times when there were definitely players that could stay with her, you know, in college.
Right.
She just you got a lot of screens and stuff, and that's great when you're dealing with not as athletic a talent, but that's the problem I see when you go, how do you get that? in the NBA. Like, look what Steph has to do to get his threes.
Right.
It's not like he's just going down popping threes over people. Like he's pulling from the logo when he has to, but he's also running around constantly trying to get
Right.
away and trying to get these shots off because a lot of times they're going to get blocked if he's not quick and coming off those screens and things. So,
But you're right, though. The biggest issue would be defense.
oh yeah, for sure. That's why I don't think she'd be on the team because I don't know that there's anybody she could really guard, in the NBA
I mean,
probably
how
at all. Because even if you're playing somebody your height, like what Damian Lillard maybe, like like that's
if she's only 6 feet?
right.
I think Dame is even taller than her.
He's at least 6'1", right?
Yeah.
But again, that's not a good matchup. So it's kind of tough. It's kind of I just thought that was an interesting conversation point because it's like they were making a point to talk about this on ESPN and
Yeah.
other sports, right?
Well, I mean, they got that. It's the big, Caitlin Clark is the big thing. And it's true. I mean, the women's Final Four outdrew the men's Final Four because of her.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of how great South Carolina was, it was because of her.
Oh yeah. As far as viewership, yeah, definitely. And I don't know that she's in for a rude awakening when she goes to the WNBA, but she's gonna have to play within more of the offense, play more like a team style player to be successful there.
Right.
What she did in college is not going to work in the WNBA. And I think that's the point. Like Diana Taurasi was making that point. And she wasn't trying to, put Caitlin down at all. She was just trying to say, look, it's a different style and you're gonna learn that quick.
Right.
But and that's where it's like the NBA, it's not just a different style. It's like a different level, you know.
Well, yeah, I think that's just the talking heads. They want to do like, oh, look at us with this. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting talking point, but still, good stuff to see. It was fun to watch her play. All right, we'll wrap it up. So if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like. Appreciates all the watches and then the listens on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. Appreciate your listens, and we will catch you next time.